We've got round sprinkles. Why not long sprinkles? It'll be more interesting and it'll enable us to learn some new techniques about Blender, which is what this whole series is about. So first things first, we need to model those sprinkles. So let's move to the left here, and we want to add an object. We haven't mentioned it before, but when you add an object, it's going to put it at your 3D cursor, and your 3D cursor is that thing. That weird little thing, little crosshair at the bottom there, that's your 3D cursor. And yeah, I don't know, Blender has a 3D cursor, maybe other applications don't. It's going to put it there. And if you don't want it there, you can move that 3D cursor somewhere else by hitting Shift and right-clicking, and you can see it's now moved it and actually attached it to the plane, which is where we would want it. If you don't have a mouse, do get a mouse. But in the interim, you can also use the cursor tool, and that'll do the same thing. All right, so we're adding long sprinkles. So obviously the object that we want to add is Shift-A, Mesh. It's the cylinder. Okay. Too big by default. So let's click this little thing, bring this up, change the radius all the way to its lowest and the depth all the way to its lowest as well. And the vertices, that's the like the resolution, right? Oh, we'll fix that in a sec. The resolution would be way too high at 32 to be scattered on an object. So let's set this to 12, and that'll be just enough that it won't look jagged and it'll look smooth. Okay, great. Now I'm going to move this up just so it's above the plane, Z. Okay, now this problem that you have, if you go in too far, it disappears. The reason for that is that Blender has a clipping start value. And because we're working at such a small scale, we've got sprinkle-sized things now, it's too small and it's clipping it out. So if you hit N and go to your View tab, the clip start value there, it's 1 centimeter by default, drag it all the way to the left, and it's now 1 millimeter, and it will have fixed that. I don't know why it's not the default. Like, maybe somebody can tell me why is that not the default value? Maybe there's a reason, but to me that would make sense, because then you never have this problem. I don't know any disadvantages. So anyway, we've got the base of a sprinkle. Need to make it long, so tab into edit mode, S, scale it Z along the Z axis to elongate it, and now we've got the rough length of a sprinkle. But how long is a sprinkle? There's no actual answer to that. If you look at reference, they are all over the place. The government evidently never stepped in and said, like, we're going to regulate it. This is the length of a sprinkle. This is the size of a sprinkle. I mean, it's the Wild West out there. They're doing crazy things. So what that means as artists is we get to pick whatever is most visually pleasing. And I like the ones which are more readable. And to show you what I mean, if we pull up 2, right? This one on the left is like large sprinkles, right? Very like bold. And then one on the right here is like long, thin, wispy ones that look like they get stuck in your teeth. And if we zoom out on this and then zoom out on this, you can see that the ones on the right tend to kind of like the colors and everything just kind of blur together and it just looks like a donut. Whereas the one on the left, the sprinkles are still readable. So that's what we mean by readable, and that's the one I like the most. So we're going to go with some larger looking long sprinkles, but you can see that the sizes, there's no standard size because I think it's actually like it's from a piping bag, at least if you make them at home, but you can just pipe out icing, and then when it dries, you just smash it up and it becomes sprinkles. But yeah, they just come out at any odd size. So we got long ones, we got medium ones, we got short ones, and we've even got some curvy looking ones, right? These little like just slightly bent-ish looking ones. So we're going to model small, medium, large, and a bent-ish looking one, and then we're going to scatter that across the object. So back in Blender, this is going to be, yeah, this will be the short one, okay? But the end, speaking of which, this end bit here, it's a very sharp edge. And even if we hit shade smooth, it's not going to solve it. We want that like a rounded form to it, not this horrible blobby looking shape. Because the reference, again, you can see, oh, it's a different reference now, is a rounded shape, all right? So to create that rounded form, we're going to create a bevel. And so I want you to go into face select mode, okay, which you can do by that. So this is the faces, right? This is the edges, if you go to edge select mode, and then this is the face there. So select the bottom and the top face, like that. And then we're going to add a bevel, which will immediately become clear when you do it, Control B. And now that we're in this state, as we pull out, we can change the amount of the bevel. And this is, you can see it's like, yeah, it's just adding a 45-degree angle on that corner there. But if you scroll up, it's going to add another level to it. And if you scroll up again, it's going to add another level to that. So we can very quickly create a rounded edge to the sprinkle. You don't want to go too much high because, again, this is going to be scattered all over the donut. You don't want to go too high poly. So that'll do. So that's a simple bevel operation, and it's very common when you're modeling. So yeah, Control B is how you do that. All right, so look at that. We've got one sprinkle. So now we will need to create 3 more. So this is the small. So let's go Shift D and then X to just move it along the X-axis. This is going to be the medium one. So edit mode, and I'm going to go into toggle wireframe and vertice select mode. And now selecting the top part of the sprinkle, hit G, Z, and I'm going to move, oops, if you've got proportional editing, turn that off. G, Z, move that up. Okay, that'll be the medium one. Yep. And now Shift D, X, move it along. This is going to be the long one. So edit mode. And again, G, Z, move it up. And this is going to be the long sprinkle. I don't go too long, maybe that long. Okay. And then I want to make a bent sprinkle that's slightly like curved. So Shift D, X, move it across. And now with this one, if I was to try to like curve this out, there's not enough information here. Like if I move that, it's just a straight edge there. So if I want to make it curved, I got to have more geometry there. So like we've done in the past, Control R is how you create a loop cut. So when you do that, it says, where do you want to put it? I want more than one though. So I'm going to scroll up till I get, yeah, just a bunch of loops until I get what looks like square faces on those points, somewhere around that. I don't want to go too high poly. Yeah, like that. What is that? That's in the bottom left-hand corner. 8 cuts. Okay. Click, and then it's saying where do you want to place it. Right-click to cancel the movement so it places it right in the center. And now, oh, there we go. Okay. Now we've got this one over here that is just long and straight but low poly, and this one, same shape but high poly. So to add a bend to it, in previous tutorials, I actually went into like edit mode and we did like proportional editing, and it was just complicated and it actually didn't look great. I've learned actually there's a modifier that'll do it very simply. Go to your modifier stack, add modifier. You could find it inside here or you could search for it, but it's the simple deform modifier. So add that, and by default it is wrong. So change it from twist to bend. And look at that. We've got our sprinkle. Ha! And you can very easily, whoops, change the amount from a little curve to a large curve. And I think somewhere around the 30-degree mark. You will notice though that it's like it's bent more at this angle, and that's because it's bending it according to the origin point. So you see these little dots? You might have wondered what they are in Blender. That's called your origin point, and it's used for a lot of things. Like if you rotate an object, you can see it's rotating from the point of that origin point. Like physics, a bunch of things use the origin point. The best way to think of it is like the center of mass for the object. So generally speaking, as a rule of thumb, you want it to be in the center of the object. And you can do it very quickly. You select multiple objects. You want to clear its origin point. Shift, select all of them, and then right click, and then say set origin to geometry. And now you can see it's put it in the middle. And now our curve is actually based on the starting in the middle, which is what we want. So yay for us. Now I need to apply this or else the next part it'll go wonky. So apply your simple deform so that it's actually realized onto the mesh. Okay, so going to your outline, you can see we started from humble beginnings, but we've now got too much going on, and it's all starting to get a little bit chaotic. So the way you organize things in your outline and in Blender generally is you can group things together by creating collections. So by default, we've actually got one collection already, just called collection, but we can create new collections by this little button in the top right-hand corner to create a new collection. And I want to create it outside of our, I mean, I don't actually know if we need, like, I don't know why it creates a collection for you. You could just, it's in the scene collections. Anyways, I don't know if we actually need that one. So we create a new collection just by hitting that, and we can double click it to rename it to be whatever it is we want. So I'm going to call this sprinkles, okay? And because we have two types of sprinkles, we have the sphere round sprinkle, and then we have these long sprinkles, I'm going to create two other collections within this collection. So hitting new again, you can see it's placed it underneath it, and I'm going to call this one round. And then clicking sprinkles again, I'll add another collection, and this one I will call long. Oh, wait, sorry, this one, long. There we go. Okay, so to move something to a collection, you can do it one of two ways. One, you can select the sphere, which is the round. Remember, it's this little guy over here, the little tiny round sprinkle. You can just drag that into the that collection, and you can see it's now moved it there. The other way is in your 3D viewport. If you select all of the objects that you want to move to a new collection, hit M, and it brings up this, and you just say move to the sprinkles long sub collection. There we go. And now they're all moved there. And now this one here, if you wanted to give this a name, you could. We got the camera, we got the light, we got the plane. Yeah, you know what? Let's move our donut and our icing. Let's move that to a new collection as well. So M, and we can actually create a new collection from the move options as well. So I'm going to go new, and let's call this let's say donuts, because we're going to duplicate it and make more donuts in the future. So donuts. Okay, great. So now this one here has got the camera, the light, and the plane. So I'm going to do what I sometimes do with a scene is just call this one ENV, which is for environment. Since this is a tutorial, I'll actually just type it out. I'm not going to be lazy. Environment. Okay, so we've got some organization in our scene so that as we add and grow our scene, it's not going to get too crazy. All right, so it's also good that we've created collections because we can now use that to scatter across the geometry nodes. So with our donut here, so the icing and the donut, we're going to create a duplicate, and this is going to be the variant with the long sprinkles. So Shift D and then hit X to move it along the X axis. So it's just placed next to it. And then clicking your icing, you can see we've got the modifier stack that we created the geometry nodes on. And if we were to start tweaking this and make this look like long sprinkles, it would apply to this one over here, because we can see that little number next to it. And that number, if you hover over it, I think we mentioned it before, but it displays the number of users sharing this data. So any change you make to this is going to be reflected on that one. So if we click the 2 button, it's now independent, so we'll now have 2 different versions. So the one on the left, the original one, let's call that round sprinkles, and the one on the right, let's call that one long. Brain fart for a second there. Long sprinkles. Okay. And now with that object selected, let's go back to the geometry nodes tab. Okay. All right. So make sure you're looking at the right object. Make sure it's the one with long sprinkles in the name. And if we were to start editing here, we would have made one big mistake, and it's because this is actually not the long sprinkles node setup. We clicked the pin button. Remember that? The pin means it's always going to be there, even if it's another object with a different geometry node setup. So remember, yeah, it's a common mistake. You always do it. You forget you've got pin on, and then you start changing things, and it does the wrong one. So make sure you're looking at the one that has long sprinkles in the name. Okay, so the bit that obviously matters the most is this bit, where it goes into our instance on points node, and we've currently got it connected to a sphere. So, I mean, you could change that to another object, but that won't help us because we've got more than one object. We want to scatter 4 different objects across it. So we can delete that and instead just drag from your outliner. Don't just, if you click on it, if you click off it, it's just going to disappear. So make sure you don't do it. You've clicked the icing, but you need to click and drag into your node setup. And now it's got a collection info node rather than object info node. Drag that into your instance input, and nothing happened. It has actually happened, but it's off center in a weird place. Why is it doing that? It's because of the way 3D software handles data. It's now doing it on its like global or local position, not relative to, anyway, it doesn't matter. What you need to do is check 3 boxes whenever you use collections to scatter. Separate, reset children. Now it's on the mesh correctly. And then you can see it's actually using all 4 of them on each point. So then you click pick instance, and now it's going to use one of those, not all 4 of them together. Okay, so it's good. It's using it, but What's going on? Well, the reason this one was easier with its round sprinkles is that the rotation of the objects didn't matter because it was round. Now that we have long sprinkles, you can see the rotation matters and it's currently screwed up. So how do we fix that? The first way, well, yeah, there's a number of things you need to do to make it work correctly. You'll see, is we want to take the rotation of the face. So the face of these mesh here, we want it to affect the objects, right? So we take the output of our distribute points on faces, the rotation of that, and drag it into the rotation input of the instances. And now you can see it's having some effect. It's still not right, but that is because these sprinkles are currently just pointed upwards. So it thinks, okay, well, you want to point them all outwards. Anyways, to fix that, I mean, you could fix it you could actually fix it in geometry nodes. This is simpler. So if we just rotate those sprinkles along the x-axis, so R, X, right? And then we just want to lie them down flat. So essentially 90 degrees. You could type in 90 degrees or holding down Control will move it in 5-degree increments. Okay, so 90 and then do a single click. Okay, so why has that not worked? Well, it's because, as I mentioned before, when you're scaling or rotating things, it's not actually saved to the object. So to apply it, you have to go Control A and then say rotation. Now that we've done that, it's worked correctly. All right, so now you can see what I said by you need to do a lot to make it work correctly. The rotation is working, but it's not doing what you would expect, and that's because geometry nodes are so flexible, you have to tell it exactly what you want to do. We want actually random rotation. So around each of the points, we don't want to each have the exact same rotation, we need to randomize it. So for that, if you want to tweak the rotation on anything between this point here, on this dotted blue line, let's just move that out the way, we need to add Shift-A, Utilities, Rotation, Rotate, not Euler, Euler. Yes, I know. They went with the weird pronunciation. I think it was a Frenchman, right? Could be German. Doesn't matter. Same, right? Just to annoy all the Europeans. Anyways, rotate Euler, and we're just going to drop it on that line till it lines up. Okay, so nothing's happened currently, but with this, we could change the rotation of our sprinkles up here. But you'll notice that as you rotate it, it's kind of weird. It's not the rotation that you would expect for each point. It's the relative to the actual object as a whole, right? Which just means we need to change from object to local. And now, as you move it around, you can see we're able to rotate those sprinkles. But again, it's not changing like randomizing it. It's giving a solid value. So to randomize it, if we drag out of the rotate by input and then type in random, it'll bring up this, and we're looking for random value. Click, and now we get this. Ooh. So this node looks kind of scary, right? It's got a whole bunch of different values in it, and it says vector, and it's very, very foreign. It's actually easier to understand it from a float point of view. With the random value, if it's in a float state, it's going to generate a value from 0 to 1 on each point. So if you've got like 10 points, one of them is going to be like 0.015, one of them is going to be like 0.92, and one's, whatever. When it's in vector state, it's the exact same thing. You've got min and you've got max, but there are 3 values. And the reason for that is that there are 3 axes. There's the x-axis, there's the y-axis, and there's the z-axis. And same here, right? So you're able to define what type of rotation on each axis. So if we set both, and by the way, if you want to change multiple values at once in Blender, you can just click and drag down, and then you can change all of them. So we set all of them to 0. And now you could see this bottom one is going to be the Z, because it's X, Y, Z. It doesn't tell you, like, I don't know, because it's vector math, I guess there's other areas of Blender, anyway. But this is the Z axis. If we increase this one, you can see that's the main one that we want to change, right? Because that's the one that makes the most difference. Now, you might also know, looking at this, you're probably thinking like, okay, well, we need to rotate it by 360 degrees, so we would set this to 360. But you can see they're more than rotating fully already. So what value is this exactly? This is radians. Oh, just to get real. So radians, degrees. Actually, I had to ask ChatGPT before I recorded this. What's the difference? Radians are more mathematical and easier for mathematical equations. It's the circumference of 2 pi is the circumference. Look, obviously I don't know. But what I'm trying to tell you is you just need double pi to make it 360 degrees, which is actually tau. To make it really complicated, it's tau. So double pi, so pi is 3.142. Tau is double that. And anyways, you get the idea. So you can type in tau and it'll actually give you the correct value. So that's 360 degree rotation. We also want it, because you can see this is the other axes, like the middle one spinning around. So we also want it on that one because we've got a curved one. So let's make that tau. And then this top one is the X, which is actually going to make it like wonky, like, so these will be like seesawing up. So if you increase that, that's where it gets crazy and you don't really want to use that. You do want a little bit though, because it would make sense if they're sprinkles. They're not going to be completely flat. You're going to have some variance where like some bit has absorbed into the icing at a different angle than another, but just not too much essentially, or else it starts to look like little marshmallows or whatever all over it. But guys, that's roughly it. That's the hard work. That was, I mean, I know that was very technical, but it was just 2 nodes. Rotate Euler, set it to local, and then this random value, and we're changing that to rotate it. And we did it. We got nice looking rotation. Now, one thing we do have to change is the distance min. So because these longer sprinkles obviously are bigger, then the distance min has to change as well. So we can change that to something that makes sense. Let's go 0.04. That might have actually been pretty perfect. Let's try 3. 3's got a little bit. Oh, actually, you know what? The other thing, again, looking at reference, I like those big chunky looking sprinkles. So I want these to be bigger. So we could, alter the scale of the actual sprinkles, but we're working with geometry nodes and we've actually got a scale value right here. So we could change it here just as easily. So the scale dragging down, and again, there's not just one value, there's 3 axes, so X, Y, Z, so drag down on all. 1.5 is going to give us some nice, big, chunky looking sprinkles. And now this distance value needs to be a lot bigger. So let's go 0.06. That's actually pretty good. I'm getting pretty good at nailing it. 0.0, no, I was right before. There's always going to be some overlap, right? You're not going to be able to stop it because it's not doing object like collisions. It's nothing like that. It's a very simple, again, it's doing a point and then it's creating a radius around it. And if you do the correct amount, which for this is probably something like this, then it looks way too predictable and boring, which we don't want. So 0.006 looks pretty good for me with a scale of 1.5 for these. And that is it. I was going to put in the random color in this part of the tutorial, but I think we've gone over already. So join me in the next part and we will finally add some color to our sprinkles and make this look nice. So join me in the next part.